Look like we're really gonna
We'll
get-
call the meeting to order. Let the roll call show that Counselor Helene is not here. And the next thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, so let's stand for that. Okay, Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'll turn it over to Public Utility.
Well, that will call our public utilities meeting to order. Do a roll call on that.
I have the roll call, sir.
Okay. Also entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion second to approve the agenda. All in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Aye, motion carries. And from there, I'll just turn it over to Keith.
Okay, oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I speak on behalf when I talked for the commission to say, just appreciate it. I do think this is always a good idea for the council and the commission to get together. Just allow you folks to chat. I do have some materials what I go through, help facilitate a discussion. If you have questions, let me know. But again, this is more for really the two governing bodies to meet and have a conversation about things. Did want to just take a little bit of time to just kind of go through some of the major accomplishments of the utility. I did include in our packet the 2023 year in review, which I believe is in the city's packet as well. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But it goes through a lot of details for both the electric and water, as well as the office staff, legal, just all sorts, HR, all sorts of things. A few items that I do want to talk about, though, is a lot of our big activities right now is in regards to our electric capital improvement plans. We started implementation on phase 1 of that plan, which is a 10-year 3-phase, 12 million when we approved it, when the commission approved it in 2021, but inflation, everything, that's gone up a little bit. It includes a lot of undergrounding, continues with the voltage upgrade. Right now we have a dual voltage system. Once this project's done, we will be on just one voltage, which is 12,470 volts. For that phase 1, we did acquire a $6.7 million bond, which the city council had also approved. And we were able to get some favorable interest on that because we received an A3 rating from Moody's during that process. We also have updated our electric rate study to confirm that we're still on plan. And the electric department did win this year's APPA Safety Award and Reliability Award. And SIPA and its membership also won the Energy Stars Partner of the Year Award. So the utility has been recognized for a lot of its achievements over the last year. On the water side, we have completed our water AMI conversion. Well, at least I call it completed. We've got like a handful of customers that we just can't get into the basements, but we'll get there. But that project has been substantially completed. We've completed the renewal for our wellhead protection plan. We conducted a comp study, which was and has been and will continue to be very helpful for the evaluation of development and infrastructure upgrades. I know it did help with like the 7th Avenue project as well in WSB's analysis, as well as any new projects that come in. We purchased a backhoe so that we could repair water main breaks ourselves. We were worried about response times with contractors and just decided it was time for us to build some of that capability internally and then help minimize some of our outside contractor costs. We also secured a grant to replace the galvanized service lines. That project is to be completed this year. The commission doesn't even know this, but I did get word this morning from Department of Health. They signed off on everything, so we'll be filing for bids and still anticipate that project getting done here this construction period. So finally got a response from MDH on that. So that's all going really well. And then we're continuing to work with the city and the county on the 7th Avenue Seesaw 4 reconstruct. We just had a big meeting today to go through the details of that. So that is moving forward nicely. On the power plant side, we have begun the process to renew our air permit. Haven't heard anything from PCA. We filed that back in January, I believe. That's not unusual. I've talked to some of our peers who haven't gotten air permit renewals in 3 to 5 years. So It's just,
It's like on wastewater treatment.
yeah, that's the MPCA. So, but we are prepared for when that comes up so that the power plant remains operational. We have completed, last fall, we completed breaker testing on the entire system to prevent any widespread blackouts due to faulty equipment. And we just completed replacing the roof over the power plant a couple weeks ago. On the administrative side, we did establish an IT MOU with the city to share resources, of which both governing bodies have participated in. And I haven't kicked that out yet, so thanks, Seth, for all your help. We've also worked on a street lighting MOU with the city to document roles and responsibilities. We also worked with the city to hire a new safety contractor in the last year, where we both we brought Safe Assure in, and that's been going very well, I think, as well. We've also updated our own internal policies to meet new state requirements, and worked on multiple development proposals, day-to-day operational needs. And just for something a little fun, we actually won the Chamber's Winter Wonderland Business Decorating Contest for our window decorations last winter. A couple of things I did want to mention here too is I think I mentioned this before at a city council meeting, but I want to reiterate it. SIMPA, our electric wholesaler, did increase our rates 10% in December of 2023. We increased our electric rates 1% in January of 2024. And so we ended up eating a lot of that increase. And we were able to do that because we captured a lot of internal efficiencies. But even though we've been seeing a lot of pressures, just like everybody else on the wholesale supplier side, we've been doing everything we can to mitigate those to our customers. And then in addition to that, we did decrease our water rates 5% this year as well. Again, we did this by reducing our local cost to serve. And so one of the things I do when I look at the data is I look at our total expenses. And especially on the electric side, if I look at how much of that is just from SIMPA, that's really at the end of the day, I don't have much control over that. But that ends up being the bulk of what our expenses is. It's just buying the power wholesale. From 2016 to 2019, we were averaging that our SIMPA expenses with about 69.3% of our overall budget. From 2020 to 2023, that average has gone up to 70.8%. So again, if I take what our SIMPA bill is and figure out what percentage of our total expenses that is, that's becoming a larger and larger share of our expenses. That's an indication that we have streamlined what we can internally and locally. Now, going from 69.3 to 70.8 might not sound like a lot. I mean, it's 1.5%. That's an average savings for us of about $151,000 per year. So that's, I mean, we're talking real money at that point. And as an example, in 2023, SIMPA actually constituted 72.4% of our expense budget, and which is I estimate to be about $321,000. I really wanted to emphasize that because I think it does show a lot of the work that we've done to improve operations. And in fact, if you look at our expenses for 2023, they were actually lower than what our expenses were in 2016. That's how much we've done internally on that. I know rates are always a big question, so I did put together, and it's in your packets, I gave stuff to the commission as well. Using EIA data, which to me is sometimes the best way to look at it. I just
define what EIA is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I get hung up on my acronyms. The Energy Information Administration, which is a division of the Federal Department of Energy. The electric industry is one of the most regulated industries in the country, and we fill out a bunch of reports. One of those allows EIA to present an annual energy outlook, and in there they will typically summarize the performance of different utilities, of every utility really across the country. So unfortunately, it is a federal government, so data takes a while for it to get filtered through. So I don't have 2023 data because that doesn't get released until October. But I did provide a graph of 2021 and 2022 EIA data for us and our neighbors, as well as Excel. And again, my point here is to show that electric utilities are all right in the same range. So there's some variations. Numbers can change from year to year just from load shape differences. If you have a large industrial customer that goes from 2 shifts to 3 shifts or vice versa, it changes what the average revenue per kilowatt hour is. And so sometimes these differences are driven more from the economy than from individual rates. But again, just in the interest of sharing data and being transparent, I wanted to share this and show that, kind of where we are in comparison to everybody else.
I just got a question, Keith, on
Yes.
these rates. So I'm looking, you said that SIMPA has increased by 10% this year,
Yes.
and your cost per unit has gone up a little bit, tiny little bit. But Connexus and East Central have gone down. Did they not get that increase?
That's hard for me to answer. What I will say is the increases we're seeing on the wholesale market, everybody's seeing. SIMPA's rate increase was really driven by LMPs, and that's what we all pay as a utility as electricity moves through. Again, the differences sometimes that you see in there have more to do with local economic performance of the customers. So if your load shape changes, you could sell the same number of kilowatt hours, but get more revenue because of when it happens. So it's really hard to tease out specific items out of a number that is so, what's the word? I want to say global, but it's really looking over the entire industry, trying to boil it down to one number. So you always have to be a little careful with that. To your point, different utilities are doing different things without looking at where their cash reserves are at, without looking at where their balance sheets are at. It's really hard to know if some utilities perhaps just decided to use up some of their cash reserves and mitigate a price increase. That's common. The delay in doing infrastructure investments is another common strategy, whereas somebody like an Excel might be spending $3 million a year in capital upgrades, but because of the price increases, they only did 2. And so they didn't do a rate increase at that. It's not typically sustainable. Eventually that catches up with folks. And that's why I think you see a little bit of an increase there on the Excel side is there's some other things going on there as they reorient some of their internal finances. It's typically what I've seen.
And this is 2021 and 2022 data.
I was gonna say that.
I was
looking
that
at
in November, when you get the 23 numbers, we should add another column to see exactly.
I missed the dates. I was thinking it was last year,
Yeah.
2 years ago.
No, but your point is, I think is really important, is where you do want to be a little bit careful in just, in how the utility is absorbing those rate increases. For us, we've been able to do it through streamlining our operations. We're still making investments in the CAP plan. We're still expanding our programs and services to our customers. So I don't feel like we're jeopardizing anything. Our cash reserves have not gone down. So as to what the others are doing, I can't speak to that.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh, absolutely. Any other questions on recent activities at the utility or any of the information I just presented? Okay. The next thing that we have on the agenda, Mr. Chair, if I may continue, is the commission wanted to share with the council, some information that we have worked on that we discussed at the last joint meeting, which is a feasibility of annexing more territory. The commission did contract with DGR Engineering to do kind of a high level feasibility of what it would mean if the South Princeton Industrial Park was annexed into PPU service territory. We were very clear with DGR. And I had multiple conversations with Blair Metzger over there about this. It was very hands-off. We wanted an honest assessment to look at this. We didn't say this is the answer that we wanted. It was more run the numbers, give us your independent outside perspective on this as to what it would mean, both for the customers that would be coming in, what it would mean for the utility, and what it would mean for our existing customers. So DGR went through, we had some data available from back when we had some conversations with Connexus in 2018. And then looking at kind of projecting that out and understanding kind of where things are at with annexations in general within the state. DGR's preliminary analysis indicated that we have the financial resources to acquire the area, that the acquisition would have a net positive outcome. What that means is that the funds, the revenues that would be collected would be in excess of what is needed to do the annexation, to make the investment in the infrastructure. And it would have some money left over, given that we are a municipal utility. We don't have stockholders. That revenue could then be either invested into the system or actually be provided as a benefit in terms of a potential rate reduction. So I know sometimes that can sound weird to folks of how you could potentially borrow, I don't know, $5-8 million and reduce rates. But that's exactly how utilities are structured in terms of acquiring additional service territory. So it's always helpful to grow. And the reason it works so well for us is because we would not have to staff up for it. We can handle it all with our existing infrastructure. So we are spreading our fixed costs, what I talked about earlier, that 28% of our expenses that are internal labor. That doesn't change. We would just be able to spread that over more and more sales. And that's why overall, we would see a net positive outcome from that. I did include DGR's memo so that the council could read that for themselves of how we did the analysis, the different things that we looked at, as well as DGR's recommendation at the end. The annexation process is a long process, just to prep folks. I mean, it can take years. It can take 1 to 2 years to negotiate contracts with the original utility. The engineering and switchover will often take a construction season at least. Just how you phase it all in can sometimes take some time, and that's when it goes well. It can, when things get a little bit more contentious, it can drag on more than that. So I guess that's what I had to go through. I'm happy to go through that in more detail. I want to be sensitive to the council's time because I know you have other things on the agenda, but I know I'm here to answer questions, and I'm sure the commission would be happy to participate as well.
So reading through, was it DGR?
Yes.
DGR's memo. It sounded like it would be, it's really close on rates for their customers.
So yeah, thank you for asking that. I should have gone into that in more detail. Here's my point in saying things the way that I said them. Comparing our rates today to Connexus rates today would not be an apples to apples comparison. Because if we had the annexed territory and we were able to spread our fixed costs over more customers, I don't think our rates today are what they would be post annexation. I think we would actually be able to lower rates. So to me, the better comparison is to compare what we think our rates are going to be once we annex to what Connexus's rates are at that point. And so that's where it's more challenging to run the numbers side by side. And that's where I want to spend some more work. And a lot of it's going to be dependent upon what are the engineering costs to reconfigure the park? What are we looking at for lost revenue charges to the, for Connexus? What are we looking at an interest rate for? Because this will require a bond. I mean, it is a significant investment. But once that bond is paid off, then all of that revenue gets to be used for our fixed costs, which I think would result in even more of a rate reduction, because then we don't have obviously the payment on the bonds that we would have to do at that point.
How long would it be till the bonds are paid off?
Typically, they're 20-year bonds.
So they wouldn't see a discount in their electric for 20 years?
No, no, what DGR's analysis is that it would be a net positive from day one. So there's a couple of different strategies to do this, but we would be able to see some impacts on the rate side immediately based on DGR's preliminary analysis. What I'm saying is the lost revenues will typically pay out after 10 years. So there would be another opportunity to do a rate adjustment. And then the bond payment, which is typically a 20-year bond, would be paid off in 20 years, which would be an opportunity to again reevaluate rates and help spread those benefits to our ratepayers. So it's really looking at it very long term. But I think in the long run, it would definitely help not just the customers coming in, but even our existing customers to be able to provide the same level of service to everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, as long as, you make the conscious effort to make sure you do that
Right,
when those get paid off.
correct.
You made a comment about contentious with Connexus. Are they not interested in?
Well, no utility likes to give up service.
Yeah,
I do expect it to be, they're not, under statute, they're required to. It's kind of like forced annexation that
Mhm.
that the cities have the power to do
Mhm.
when you encompass more than 60% of
Right.
a boundary.
Mhm.
Any city, local government has the ability to do a forced annexation.
Mhm.
It's kind of that way.
Yeah, I just hope it doesn't become that way with the customers out there, because that was their big concern a few years ago.
Well, I mean, there is a political component to this.
Yeah.
I can't control what Connexus tells them.
Mhm.
All I can control is the methodology that we've employed, being transparent in how we've come to the decision and why we think that this is at worst a wash, at best, a better service, more reliability, increased response time, things of that. I will point out that, we've had a customer move from the South Industrial Park to the new business park, Glen Meadow, who we worked very closely with, and I think they even gave us a shout out at their open house
Yeah.
that they just recently did. So for them, they haven't noticed, I mean, they haven't voiced any concerns.
Yeah.
In the switching of suppliers. And fundamentally, I've always found that for most customers, it's just who do you send the check to? They're not that tied in, but given that we have local staff here with the reliability and the ability for them to have more of a direct say in how their utility is managed, I think that's why I like municipal utilities. I just think we're closer to our customers in a lot of cases for that reason.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys will come up with a plan of how to, welcome them and explain to them all the benefits of switching and all that.
Yeah.
So,
PR.
yeah, some PR stuff will be very beneficial, because there are some people that are scared.
And I think, with all the rhetoric over the last, I don't know how many years of misinformation about the utility rates of the PUC, I think didn't help anything.
Mhm.
But I guess, the way that we approached it was if it's not a win-win-win for the utilities, for the current ratepayers and for the future ratepayers, So we didn't want the current ratepayers to subsidize anything to keep the industrial park rates low,
Mhm.
just to be able to say, hey, we can keep your rates low, but we'll have to raise up, the current, we didn't want to do that. So I guess the study just kind of, the preliminary, we've got to do some more digging into this. Isn't the final, go ahead, I guess, but so far it looks great. It looks like, we can, expand our territory, keep the rates the same or lower. And it's gonna take years. I mean,
Mhm.
and not, probably most of us here won't ever get a pat on the back for it, maybe at least I hope that some way down the road, someone's like, oh, somebody smart did this, actually took the initiative to do this, at some point in history.
Well, and you didn't say why wasn't this done 20 years ago?
Right, right. I mean,
We can't.
We could sit here and say that, and I don't want someone to say that about us as a commission, like, why didn't you guys do this?
Yeah,
Why
I
didn't you
think
look
we're
into
saying
it?
we're being more proactive.
Right,
That's
and
what
so-
they're here, but than they were in the past.
So before it really takes hold, it's gonna be 15, 20 years before we see the full benefit of it. Probably, maybe a little bit more than 20 actually, but by the time, we decide, do a little more information gathering to see if things are really lining up. And there's some other interesting things that, probably won't share yet until we see the facts on it for sure, but there's some other things that might be a win for the city. Also, that there's a possibility that we're looking at, as far as, pilot and tax and things like that, so. But, we gotta get a little bit farther down.
When there's an annexation like this, and I don't even know, business versus residential, if there would be like new customer fees, deposits and stuff like that, would that pertain to them being their businesses and they're getting annexed in? Would they, incur some deposits and?
That's an interesting question.
Fees and things?
Typically what happens is, especially when they're existing customers, that once the agreement is kind of finalized, all right, how do we make this transition as smooth as possible? And so how do you transfer the accounts from one utility to the next? It's hard for me to answer that question because I don't know what deposits they may have now,
Mhm.
if any, with Connexus. But I think those sorts of details, when we get to that point, and that's quite a ways down the road yet. I know we're gonna make this as easy as possible, in terms of a transition.
Okay.
When I've seen it happen in other areas, no, there weren't. They were kind of grandfathered in. But then any new customers that would come in obviously would follow under our standard service rules at that point. So usually there's some sort of understanding.
Yeah, it might be a good friendly little
Correct.
selling point for you guys to.
Correct.
I mean, we're gonna have to do some PR because my understanding is that Connexus had, because that is a cash cow for them, that they have a representative that's assigned just to that industrial park, so.
Mhm.
That's,
They're very proud of that industrial park.
well.
Over ice cream, I remember here.
Yes.
How proud they are of that.
Yeah, well, I think that is their only industrial park, because I think most of what they service is primarily residential. There might be some stuff down in Ramsey now that they have, but I think this particular area is like if it's not their only one, it's their biggest one.
Well, big wires are going into that industrial park, so you can push a lot of electricity through it. I got another question, and it's sort of related, and it's gonna be a complicated answer, so you don't have to get too much into the weeds. The last SIMPA meeting that I went to, they were concerned about power generation. Everything from reliability of Sherco to how are they gonna replace that? What happens when you increase your demand and you have questions about where your power is coming from? How does that all work?
In terms of an annexation.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Okay, so,
theoretically, I mean, you're needing more electricity.
well, yeah, it's important to kind of define the words appropriately. our load's going up. The grid load doesn't change. It's just who's supplying it. We're all buying from the wholesale market. We're all paying through the same LMP. So even though this would increase our peak load, the amount of power going through that substation doesn't change. It's just who's responsible for it. So from that regard, it wouldn't impact anything in terms of that. To your point though, SIMPA does have, goes through an IRP, integrated resource plan, looks at how is it gonna meet its needs, and they handle that through wholesale purchases and arrangements they have with other providers. They would just have to tweak those up a little bit. In the grand scheme of things, Princeton is about, I wanna say, maybe 8 to 10% of SIMPA's load, because everything's driven by Rochester, Austin, and Owatonna. So really a lot of what we do doesn't really impact them that big. So I don't see any problem from that perspective. Your point, though, that we are seeing some problems on the grid, I think are accurate. We are looking at, there are a lot of concerns about some reliability issues and supply side issues, but that's true whether we annex or not. That's a system-wide problem that we're trying to face.
I guess I was just assuming that if SIMPA's power generation, because they generate power too, right? I mean,
They do, but they also have a lot of wholesale contracts.
right. So I would imagine that their power generation is discounted to their customers more than wholesale power purchases.
No, what happens is everybody pays the same LMP, which is the market transaction cost. We build power plants to try to be a hedge on that because we think we can do it cheaper than what the market is currently providing. And if we can't, then we just buy off of the market. So the sizing of it can be impacted, obviously, but it's not like the power that we get here from an accounting standpoint. We're buying directly from Sherco. We're buying it out of the grid as it is, and it's just how you balance what you put in versus what you take out. It gets complicated, and I'm trying to say that in a non-engineering way, and it's
that's actually a
these
good
guys know
answer.
that's hard for me.
I think the best explanation I've heard you give is that all the power's in a lake and everybody's drawing out of that same lake. And you look at it that way, it's, everybody that produces power dumps it into the lake and then you draw out of it and then you trade enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how I try to explain it, because everybody understands it.
So if there's not enough power to go around, it doesn't matter which jurisdiction you're in.
Right. We're all going dark.
Yeah, well, that's why we fire up when they had the, problems in Texas, and we had to fire up here to dump into the lake, so. It's all that connected, so.
I was gonna say, the power generation is not just a simple problem, it's a nationwide problem. I mean, every part of the country's has, there just isn't enough power being generated regardless.
How did you get your power into Texas?
Oh, well, the country is set up into different sections. We're part of MISO, and MISO serves all the way down to Louisiana in that area. And it's that they're the balancing authority is what they call it. And it's just, you keep all of that balanced, and electricity, like water, will just flow wherever it needs to go. Now, did our energy actually go to Texas? No, but we were able to bolster our stuff, so whatever imports would normally come up from the south could stay in the south.
It'd stay in the south, but I guess my question was, isn't Texas kind of independent on their power grid, or is it not quite as bad as it was?
Yes, ERCOT is one of the other jurisdictions. They are pretty extreme in being independent. What happened with the Texas event was also part of a natural gas issue where the natural gas supply kind of failed. And when you are generating electricity through natural gas turbines, those couldn't operate, and that's where the electricity shortages came in the south, was because of a lack of natural gas. And then the wind turbines, the oil's in them once you get down below a certain temperature where can sometimes cause problems. That's what we see up here. But in Texas, what happened there was their natural gas facilities, they don't winterize them because they figure it doesn't get cold. So they were just sitting out in the air. And so when it came in with freezing temperatures, the pumps froze. We don't have that problem up here because we don't just put them out in the middle of the yard. We actually insulate them and protect them a little bit. And they have now learned that they should insulate
Need to
their
do
pumps.
Yeah, no, it was more of a, you know, Texas is all by itself kind of a thing.
Right. But it had to do with the natural gas interaction because the natural gas supply got constrained because of frozen pumps.
I'm pretty sure that if they needed electricity, they figured out a way to put up some big power lines and do an interconnectedness.
They're starting to look at it now, but they fought that for many, many years.
Oh,
They
I
just,
Mhm.
they never wanted to be interconnected with other folks.
It's Texas.
But if you look at MISO and some of the other regional jurisdictions, there are those interconnects to help with that. There was an incident years ago. There was an outage out on the East Coast that cascaded through. The folks in MISO, it was MAP at the time, were able to cut those connections so that we didn't have a blackout through our region as well. But they saw it coming and turned everything off. So they do exist.
As far as generation too, I know Simpla's been talking about, with Mr. Butcher about expanding, generation here, you know.
Correct. We have 12 megawatts of diesel generation. Our summer peaks are starting to be around 14. So on the worst day of the year, we can't cover the town anymore. So we are, actually with DGR, we're having them do a generation feasibility study for us as well to see if that cash flows. Given the CAT plan, that gives us the added reliability of being able to backfeed the town from the north and the south. Generation isn't as important as it was back in the old days when we were on the end of a radio line. But given with where the market is at and the reliability issue that you've already mentioned, it could be a good hedge for us on our rates. And so if we could build some generation and then take that money and put it towards our ratepayers, that would seem to be a good thing. So we're exploring it from a financial perspective to see if that's a good hedge for us.
Yeah, the initial proposal wanted us to pay for it, right now.
Correct.
But now it's looking like, you know, could be the other way around, so it should be a win-win. And then also if it does work out, or we annex this industrial park, it would be nice to be able to cover them in an outage so we can supply to our own.
Yeah, but even in that case, if we annex the South Industrial Park and it's tied into our distribution system with the tie line increase that we're doing from the north sub to the plant sub, that gives that park additional reliability it doesn't have right now, because we would actually be the connector from the north. So that industrial park right now is fed from the south, just like our south sub and our plant sub are. And if that south line goes out, which we've seen, there's been an outage where the industrial park was out for a few hours. We were back up in 20 minutes because it actually happened during the day. And so our folks were right at the power plant ready to switch over. If we annex that in, we would be able to switch that to the north feeder line, which would give that some added reliability that it doesn't have at the moment. So we could actually increase the reliability of that industrial park more than what it is right now, just by connecting to our system.
Well, all of those are, those are points that need to be hammered left and right,
Yeah.
because, you know, without an answer, the yakking on social
Yeah.
media and wherever
Well,
else, it's just gonna go on.
And that's why it was important to get outside, you know, source to actually do the study on there. So it's not just, hey, let's just take it over because we can. I mean, that's not, absolutely not the case. I mean, does it make sense for everyone? I have friends who own businesses there. I don't want to, you know, I want them to win too, so.
Right, well, I think we all do. All right, any more questions for our fellows at the PUC? Anything else you guys want to add or ask us?
So. Sorry,
Yeah.
so what do you see are the next steps now that we've had this conversation and? So what do you see are the next steps sort of in the broad general terms of this annexation discussion?
I do think we need to, I'd like to fine tune these numbers a little bit more. Which means, we probably are gonna need to reach out to Connexus and tell them, where we're at. That's probably gonna require, an engineering study of some sort to figure out how the switch happens. And then it'll be a conversation regarding, what the lost revenues are. Once we get a better handle on those numbers, we'll be able to fine tune this to make sure that it remains a net positive for us. But that's gonna take time. So that's just gonna be a lot of, just one-on-one communications between the utility and Connexus.
Well, just to give everybody on the table kind of an idea of what are the next steps.
Double check this study, and make sure, basically in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Make sure it's,
So in other words, you'll be talking to the higher ups in Connexus and not the salesperson.
Yes, and actually, we've been working with a company called Current Compass, old colleague of mine, who loves negotiations. So he's very helpful. He's worked with other utilities on annexation, so he knows the process really well. And he's gonna be able to help us guide through that and help facilitate a conversation between the two utilities. Trying to set up everything we can to make this a professional interaction.
I think you had mentioned before that we could just immediately take it over and then negotiate. Is that correct?
It's possible, yes.
I mean, that is, but I don't know if that's the best route.
That doesn't sound like necessarily the best person.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but hopefully it goes
I
professional.
think by statute, we do have, we have the card, so to speak.
Yeah, it eventually just comes down to how much money do you wanna spend
Yeah.
to avoid a legal fight. It'd be nice if we could just come to an agreement on it. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Lawyers are expensive, more
And they're-
expensive than electricity.
Yeah.
And there is, if we can't agree, what does it go? It goes to,
Well, eventually, everything gets decided by the State Public Utilities Commission. They have jurisdiction over all service territories. So what's nice is if the two utilities can just come to an agreement, come with a proposal to the state PUC, the state PUC will typically say, all right, well, both parties in agreement. They sign off on it. If they can't, then the PUC would have to rule. So it'd be like going in front of an ALJ. And
Going to court.
Yeah.
In a divorce proceedings.
so state PUC ultimately would have to look at it. Again, under statute, it is the municipal's right to serve that. But what the state PUC comes up with in terms of the terms of that arrangement, nobody knows. There's
Better to be driving the bus.
Yeah. So, but ultimately, if we feel that Connexus, if Connexus and Prince Public Utilities can't come to an amicable arrangement, that would be how it's ultimately decided, is through the State Public Utilities Commission.
You might have already answered this one, I had to step away, but, what would be an agreement on their side? I mean, we're looking to take it over, so. What are they agreeing to?
We have to buy the infrastructure.
Right,
So the question is, what's the value?
the
of that?
value,
How do you depreciate it? What engineering costs are incurred? What is a sunk cost? What isn't? So there's that whole technical side of it.
so it's more the money side of it. than the
Correct.
Agreement.
And then, as a utility, I'm sorry, I don't mean to stumble my words. We make long-term investments, that are typically tied towards revenues. Whether it's general obligation bonds or whatever it might be. So if you're going out and you're building a power plant to serve a certain set of customers, you're doing that because they're captive in an economic sense. Obviously, the original utility would have made some sort of investments long-term to serve that area that they're now not serving. So in order to keep them whole, you need to pay what's called a mill rate, a lost revenue. How you come up with what the lost revenue is, what's an avoidable expense and what's an unavoidable expense is where a lot of the negotiations come in. Obviously, for the utility wanting to take it over, we think it's not as much as the other utility does. For them, they think it's everything, that they can't cut any costs and they're on the hook for all this. And their other customers shouldn't have to subsidize the fact that these customers have now left.
Okay.
So,
I know, I thought, but I was like.
yeah, it really gets into, yeah, it really gets into public financing, utility economics and what's the right number, because we can take it over, but Conexus shouldn't have to subsidize that takeover. They should be kept whole. The question is, what's that? How do you keep them whole? What's the real? And
No, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna finish by saying, it's also not the municipal utility's job to make Conexus money, which, you know, they're gonna try to get as much as they can. It's just normal. But there is something. And how do you know, coming to an agreement as to what that something is where it can get complicated.
So who does this negotiation? Is there like consultants that just do this?
We are working with a consultant that does that. Really, it's the general manager of one utility talking to the general manager of the other utility. We'll hire consultants to do some of the financial analysis and things like that, but ultimately it's two people get in a room and hash it out. So, the Conexus being so much bigger, sometimes it's a little harder to get to the top person and really kind of have that one-on-one stuff. So you gotta kind of work through the chain of command. But yeah, we do have somebody that we utilize. And then we also have an attorney with Spencer Fain, Kayla Brennan. She's been our attorney on the utility side. She's done a lot of annexation work. So she knows the legal process as well in case if it ever had to go to the state PUC for a ruling. So yeah, we got lawyers and things, and they have their lawyers and.
A little bit like buying a business, you know, we would have to purchase their assets and then they're, you know, blue sky. So I'm talking about what they could have earned over the next, is it just 10-year revenue then? Is it kind of
Yes.
where they go by now?
Yeah.
So
It's like when the state does condemnation, especially for businesses, you have to calculate the lost revenue. Condemnation proceedings too. I don't think the state goes out 10 years there. I think it's only 5.
Yeah, to Dan's point, it's like if you buy a business and they say it's worth so much just for name recognition, or they built up their brand, how do you value that?
Yeah.
That's where you can have a lot of back and forth.
Sure. So, I guess you asked anything from you, I guess we're probably still looking for the council to say, yes, we back you on this so far, or, you know, or that, but, you know, I guess I'd still like to hear that, you know.
Yeah, I think as long as, you know, I mean, it's a slow and win-win. I mean, I guess you know, it's a good thing. Just proceed slowly and, you know, that's my, and it seems like you are, so.
Yeah, and I think the first part of the PR would be to make sure that you guys are informed of what's going on, just so you get questions about it, that you have good, solid answers to the customers out there.
And I think generally, and I'll be a very generic speak for the council, I think there's more comfort that we're more comfortable with the idea now than we were 2 years ago or 3 years ago, however long that was for the last little blow up. You know, eventually you're gonna want, you know, letter support and that kind of things, and I don't see there's a problem with it as long as, you know, we can buy in with whatever your plan is, you know. It's pretty pretty thin skeleton at this point, so there's more. There's more meat to be hung on those bones yet before that'll happen, but I don't think there's a problem with that.
And I just wanna say, if it ever looks like it's not a win-win, I'm out. I'm not for it at all, so. But as long as it keeps green lighting the whole way, then it just makes sense. But if there's a red light, yeah, let's forget it. We don't need to spend that time and energy for something that doesn't help people, you know.
And
And it'd be-
listening to their concerns, that's, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they're gonna have concerns, but
Yeah.
I mean, if they're, you know, can be met with facts and projections, so that they've got, you know, some assurances that there aren't going to be major changes.
And, you know, the commission, we're not experts at this. That's why we hired an expert to look into it to see whether it made sense or not. So,
It'd also be helpful that, you know, the EMI or EMI Element Group is on both, has been on both sides of it. So I mean, you know, there's a real world experience that you get to point to now that didn't exist before.
yeah, exactly. And they were a big property owner over there, so.
Yeah, well, and they use as much energy as anybody over there, I think,
I
so.
guess I don't know what their load was, but yeah, but they owned a lot of property there, so. They still do not, but
Similarly for me, I supported it on that side of it to here, so definitely and behind it.
So yeah, I think to answer your question, I think, you know, unless something unforeseen happens, I think you'll get support.
Yeah, I think there was just some legit businesses that just came right out and said, if the PUC took it over, we're gone. So I don't know if they still feel that way, hopefully not. But I think if you guys just go about it the right way, you know, and convince them why it's a win-win, I think
yeah.
it won't be a problem.
You know, information, facts and
Mhm,
studies
mhm,
that show what we're looking at, so.
mhm.
Not just a bully in there saying, "Ah, but we can do it, so we're gonna do it." You know, that's complete opposite of what we're looking at.
Well, and you might need to, you know, if there are businesses out there that get upset about it, convince the community why it's a good thing for them too, you know, would be a big
That's
piece of it as well.
a good point.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and Plastic Products is a company that's in your territory.
Mhm.
You know, you could utilize Craft Plastic Products as allies in helping to tell your story, as the case may be.
and they're a good example because they have that facility in Lindstrom that they have to have their own backup generation at, because here they don't, because we have the backup generation for them. So that's a big expense to maintain backup generation, and, you know, you gotta, you know, they have to do all the tests and everything we're doing in ours.
Well, then, you know, there's one-off weather events that make it obvious what they need to do sometimes too. You know, you talk about a line going down for 4 hours, and that's a good case scenario
Mhm.
for Conexus to get that back up. I mean, it could be worse than that.
Right.
You know, if we've got a weather event coming through and if there's tornadoes involved with that take down transmission line, they don't just pop right back up again.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially if we can feed them from both sides now, you know, whatever, so.
And just as a reminder, they are our customers right now. They're water customers, so we have interactions with them. They know what it's like to, you know.
Mhm.
The problem is that if we do take it over and they get that first combined bill, they're gonna think they're doing water.
Yeah, we always have that problem.
I just had my office, my bookkeeper is like, why is our electricity so high from the city? It's like $700. And I'm like, well, if you look at the color coding on here, that we spent a lot of time on it. This is electric, this
It's
is
amazing
water.
to me that people still don't read.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Still
well,
read.
and
every time I get a call about wanting to readjust their sewer, it's like, well, didn't you look at what you pay every month for your water?
Like on the property taxes,
Oh.
county, school. and-
Yeah.
So right now, they're used to getting that separate electric bill, and if it all goes on one, they're.
Yeah. Yeah, they won't remember the bill they,
Yeah,
water bill.
no, they're just gonna say last year was. Oh, yeah. But education, I think an education campaign goes in. And just try to meet with every single business owner as many times as it takes to understand and if we get a red light. So,
And I do think I think we're gonna find a lot of synergies over the years too, whether it's the implementation of a franchise fee where you only have to deal with, one utility and make sure it's implemented the same way, everywhere, whether it's street lighting, whether it's the other services kind of out there, once having those things together do help in other areas as well. That sometimes it's a little bit more intangible, but, it turns out to be very valuable.
Time. Here it comes.
Yeah.
All right, anything else?
Yeah.
All right.
our water revenue.
Yeah, you're not having to spend much on, where nobody's spending a whole lot on irrigation right now.
Kind of enjoying that.
They haven't had to spend a whole lot on air conditioning up until today either, so.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we would just need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, good.
No, no, no.
No,
Okay, never mind.
yeah, so you're not going through the. Okay, we have a motion, a second to adjourn. All in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries.
All right, well, you're welcome to stay or
Yeah.
race the raindrops. It's your choice. No. That gets us to Princeton Wine and Spirits. Dylan, let's lay it on us.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, member of the council, we're finally getting to that point where I think we might have to start bringing in some of the THC beverages. We're getting asked a lot for now. It's 5 to 10 times a day, I'd say at a minimum. Memorial Weekend was probably every third customer from the cities was asking for it. So I called some, Rogers is at 37,000 a month in sales in it. I say it's 11,000 and, Malacca's is like 3,000 to 4,000 in sales. So,
St. Francis also.
yeah, and I haven't talked to Joe yet, so to see what he's got. Yeah, it's growing. Yeah, Rogers now, their section for their THC is the same size as their vodka section.
Their what?
Their vodka section, 46 linear feet of THC products they have. We are not gonna go near that crazy. Just that like single beer cooler we have, we'll just do one side. Cause there's your options. We don't want to go nuts. We don't need 1,000 of them like other places. Eventually we'll have the mellow filler, they'll have some stuff in here in town, so. I feel like for us it'll be a convenience. We're already here for this. We'll get it here. Well, here's your 10 options, take one or then go somewhere else if not, but I just think we need something for people.
Are there specific like laws or rules of how many they can purchase at a time or anything or
Nothing.
nothing? It's just like buying beer.
Yep. So the only
Fine.
laws are, which we don't want to do the gummies and the edible stuff anyways. Those have to be behind somewhere locked or customers cannot
Yeah.
get to them.
Yeah.
Beverages, there is no rules for whatever. They can just be wherever in your store you want, but we would still want them up front where we can keep around them all the time. So we won't do the gummies because I don't want to deal with lock cases and all that other stuff.
Kids getting a hold of them.
Exactly, yeah. So basically what we do is be like, all right, beer companies, tell us your best 5. Liquor companies, tell us your best 1 and we'll try those and go with it from there. Just something small and easy.
Are you able to run the THC purchases through your regular credit card?
So we'll do cash only. So right now, all the companies are doing cash only until the DA has now changed it to a Schedule II drug, so now they just need Congress to finish passing
Okay.
it, and then the banking laws will open up. So finally, yeah. So they're just waiting for that last step, but we all know when it comes to Congress, they're not quick on getting anything done, especially in an election year, but it could make the other side look better or not. So
So the state has allowed them, but the federal
Federal does
government
not.
still says
Yep.
we're breaking law by doing that.
yeah, doing federal banking laws, yes, if you run a credit card.
Okay,
So
but
if you do cash
federally,
only-
we're not,
Nope, we're the federal government has this weird blank spot to where as long as everything's in state lines, they
Yeah.
don't care.
Okay,
So that's why it's like
just the
California.
banking piece of
Yep,
it.
yep, because all your credit card companies are in like Boston, Dakotas, and so. And even the banks, the processors themselves, 2 of the 3 have said, we don't ask any questions on which cards you're gonna run and what they're buying with it. The third one says, if we find out what you're doing, we will shut you down. So every municipal place, are like, we're just not gonna risk that, we're just gonna tell them cash only.
So will you have a sign on the fridge or whatever
Yeah,
saying this
yeah.
is a cash
Yeah,
only
really purchase,
purchase?
yeah. And we're also gonna do a thing, tell people twice a day. I'm not gonna sell you more than that twice a day, because if you've taken it, we're gonna assume you've had one and now you're back for another one. We don't want you driving high just as much as we don't want you driving drunk.
Yeah.
So 2 purchases a day, so.
Our country is going damn crazy.
Yeah, they just released a study where for the first time ever, people are now admitting to marijuana use. It actually passed alcohol use. So it was just over 17 million people say use marijuana daily or near daily, and it was 14 million for alcohol. So the first time ever that marijuana use exceeds alcohol use in the country.
And if anyone says it's not addictive, so yeah.
Oh, yeah. And that's where,
I can
like,
tell you different.
there's one of the companies in Minnesota called Emerald Elements.
Mm-hmm.
They started as a CBD company. They'll lay that groundwork for when it was legalized. They're even they try to tell people like, don't take it until you're 25. They're like, he's like, even we agree that there's some medical issues that can pop up if you take it too young. So that's one of the guys that they're talking to too, but they keep the stuff really low, so it's very everything, so. The one thing that surprised me is how many of them are senior citizens asking for it, especially women. Like I'd say over 60% of the people ask us are senior women for it. And they're just fine. They're like, do you have the THC? It's, no, we don't. Oh, okay.
It's those
And then they
purple
leave.
hat ladies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. And you can tell because they'll kind of like look around and like come up to you kind of sideways and ask you. Yeah. So yeah, so that's just where I think we're at right now. I mean, if we don't, we don't. I can always send them to Malacca or send them somewhere else, but.
Yeah.
I just figure it's a revenue stream currently.
Apparently.
Yeah, I told them like how much it is what they're making, like I say, Andy and Rogers and.
That's their gross revenue, right?
Right now, yep, and it's a 50% markup on them.
So what's what is the rule as far as, I don't know, off sale and on sale, so to speak? I mean, you see them I've started to see them in
Bars and everything, yep.
But
There's really none.
there's no rule.
So right now, there's a Minnesota congressman trying to create a 5-hour rule. Where if you sell somebody a THC beverage, you cannot sell them an alcoholic beverage in the same 5 hours or vice versa. But like everyone says, good luck with that.
Right.
Especially,
How are you gonna do that?
Wait, you got 35 minutes left to go.
Exactly,
You
yeah.
have.
Well, yeah.
And that's what we were talking, because when I was down there, we were talking like, well, what about the people who buy rounds? How do you know which one's going to who? Like, oh, I don't like this. Here, you drink it instead.
Right?
You know, or the bar hoppers who are coming from the pizza pub to the VFW to where, you know. So, and they're like, well, it says, you know, to your best ability, like.
Oh, that helps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, so it's like, come on, guys.
Well, and I
And that's where it's unique, because Minnesota's unique, and Minnesota's one of the only states that allows on-site consumption. All the other states, you have to take it home. Minnesota, the way they wrote it, because they're, again, our legislator didn't look into it before they did it, you know. If only there was 25 other states or 23 other states that had it before us, you know, that asked questions for it.
Well, and yeah, be able to buy it in a bar it
Yeah.
seems like it's an odd thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
First time I saw it, I was like. oh.
yeah. And I've talked to a couple bars about it. They're like, it's not a very big revenue driver for them.
Well, no, it's like you're gonna have one of those, you're gonna have
Exactly.
7 beers at
Yeah.
the same time, you know,
Yep,
some of these
exactly.
people, right?
And they're very expensive. They're usually $9-10 each, even at the liquor store. They're like $8-9 a can for them, so they're not cheap at all. So, but
Good.
there's people that don't even look. They'll $40 for a 4-pack, and out the door they go, and they doesn't even blink. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, and that's why a lot of cities I don't go to, because it's
I
just
like
that
if they
markup.
get whacked out more on one than they do on
Yeah.
a 12-pack of beer.
That's a seven.
About getting so full.
Yeah, we got some like educational signs we'll hang up by the cooler too to talk about like the differences and safe ways to make it. The nice thing is with the beverages, they can have no more than 10 milligrams of total in the can. That's 2 to 5 milligram servings. So there's not like the 1,000 milligram gummies or, you know, all that stuff that really people can do. So they keep them very clean, which is, I think, another important thing. I feel like the beverages will end up turning more into the, like the help with the pain and to sleep at night more so than they are like, I'm just looking to get high. I'm pretty sure that's what the people were asking, are asking.
The old lady.
Yeah, it's,
Had
yeah,
insomnia.
exactly, yeah, just I can have,
No,
something that tastes decent and go to bed.
all right, so what do you need from us? Do you need,
We would just have to amend our current statutes for it, so it'd just be if you guys mind if we would start that process, or if not, come to.
It's like one line in the ordinance, I think.
Yeah, so we did some research and I believe
So to delete the one.
that we, I don't know what you all have on your packets, but this first, under
have nothing.
definitions, we would just,
It didn't get uploaded.
No.
oh,
I don't have anything.
oh,
so that's fine. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the actual work on the ordinance is, you know, you'll get it done. And
yeah.
if you're looking to say,
Strike
Can we do
the
it?
exclusive liquor store.
And you probably have to, you would have it at the next meeting, right, probably, or.
and you know, honestly, it's, you know, we're not holding our finger in any dam here, so.
Yeah.
I don't know that,
Yeah, and if.
I don't see a problem, but
And if
you know,
you
that's,
So I'm on record, I don't think we're any.
You know, in the store. It'd be 4, yeah, but I don't, he had so much going on, I don't know if you remember how much about that, yeah, because I'll talk to Chief Fairgrounds, make sure he has no major concerns about location of it and anything like that, and.
well, I like the fact that you have it near the front.
Yeah.
I mean, because I can see that that's a lost product, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
pretty easy.
absolutely, yep. Yeah, I can see it from my office window, so I can.
Will it still be, 18 or 21?
21.
It is 21 for, okay, that's good.
Ironically, you have to be 21 to buy it, but you can be any age to sell it in Minnesota. So you
But I
can-
mean, the THC products, the way the legislation is written, is 18.
Yeah.
So that's,
But, and that's where for us, you have to be 21 to even come into our liquor store.
okay.
So that's, yeah,
Okay.
that was one of the municipal's big pushes, like, hey, you can't even have underagers in there unless they're in there with their parents, so like, you don't have to worry as much about that, so.
Well, I mean, yours is a safer location to
Exactly, yeah,
sell it than.
yeah. Then also starting to, right?
Yeah.
All right, so, do we have a consensus? Would you like a motion?
Just consensus, you can't really vote in a study session, so as long as I'm getting three nods, or
Well, I don't love it, but we can't fight the state. I mean, if the state says,
Fortunately, that's just that we'd be trying to swim upstream if we fight too much.
so, I'm fine.
we'll
Thank you
put
very
it on
much.
the next agenda.
Thank you.
Make some more money, Dylan.
That's what we're here for.
Oh, all right, rural taxing district. Change.
I'm gonna make the money here.
Yeah, she's coming for it already.
What's that, the THC drinks?
Yeah, the money from it.
Need more money than you're gonna.
Yeah, because that's the one thing, because we'll get the profit and we get 20% of the taxes generated from it, the city will.
Nice.
All right, so we have been working on this rural taxing district, ordinance for a while. I mean, we've had it for a while in place. It was implemented a long time ago in a very odd fashion, and has not really been kind of kept up with over time. So we're looking to reintroduce it and amend some of the language in there for a couple of reasons. One, if Baldwin Township, if we do end up taking over a portion of Baldwin Township, this would allow for the rural areas to be taxed at a more reasonable rate, because they're not gonna have services, and it will also allow properties within the city limits to have the same advantage. So I kind of feel like it should, when it was rolled out, it probably should have been more looked at for different properties, because we have several properties that fit even under the old one, but wasn't part of their adopted map, or wasn't, or I don't know how they pick and choose what they did before, but so anyway, so we're looking to amend the rural taxing district. The language was in your packet, how we're looking to amend it. the properties that were on the attached grid would be the new properties that would be included, with the exception of the ones that have the notes, because a couple of them are already in it. And there's 3 of them that I want to get some direction from the council on specifically. I know you can't technically vote, but if you could give me an inclination one way or another, so when we actually do bring this to the city council, for proposed ordinance adoption, I will have a good list. Now, we're not necessarily approving the list per se. But when I send it to the auditor's office, I want to make sure that I'm very clear on what's gonna apply and what's not gonna apply.
Okay, before we get to that, can you explain the ratio part in section 4 a little bit?
I might have to have Michelle do that.
In general, what happens is that they look at the property tax rate in the adjacent township. And they apply it to, they calculate what the difference is between what is being paid in a township versus what is being paid in the city. And so you're paying a pro rata share of what city taxes would be for a parcel that has full city services. So sewer, water, and whatever. So they're still paying taxes. They're just not, they're paying closer to what the township rate would be as opposed to the full city charge.
And
And
the counties actually have like an equation, and I'm gonna ask you, I didn't quite understand it. Like, I knew that that was the outcome, but I was like,
yeah, it's
Like
like
a-
the ratio that's in there is the auditor, treasurers and the assessors understand it, but for me to try to explain it to you, that what I just gave you was kind of the Cliff's Notes version of.
So that gets decided by the county? Okay,
Yeah,
and they
Because
get it not adjacent, I'm sorry.
yeah, because it changes, tax rates change every year based on how much growth, how many sales, what the sales ratios are. That's why whenever the assessors come and when we looked at, the Maytag situation, I mean, there are years, if you look at your tax statement over time, your valuation can go up or down, your tax rate can go up or down depending upon the budget. So that's why it's just some really broad general language, but the end result is basically that you're gonna pay, if you don't have municipal services, sewer, water, you're gonna pay closer to the township rate for those parcels as opposed to the city rate, because you don't have full city services. Once full city services gets to those parcels at some point, then they'll be taken out of the rural taxing district and they'll go into the regular city taxing.
There'll be 2 districts. There's the urban taxing district and there's the rural taxing district. So if you're not in the rural taxing district, everybody else is in the urban taxing district. And so there's not, like Michelle said, the reason I can't really answer the equation is because the auditor's office will calculate that and it's based off of the adjacent townships tax rates. So,
well, no, that helps if it's not us deciding what that ratio is, that's fine. Right. There's a way to go through this, and I wanted to know what that
No,
decision-making
no,
process was.
just like every year, the auditor treasurer's offices, we send our budget to them. We send our levy amounts to them and they calculate based on classification what everybody's tax rates are. So we just feed them information, they calculate it, and then they issue the tax statements and the payment amounts.
And I think it's in there too. One of the big distinguishing differences, factors that define it is, water and sewer. And if they are able to hook up to city water and sewer, they're not gonna qualify for this. If they get decided not to, we have a few parcels that are gonna hook them,
and,
but they can't.
and the opposite, and the same thing is if they decide to, and we extend to them, they will be taken out of this district. Yeah.
Okay. What I'm talking about, somebody that doesn't have access now, they don't have a line close enough.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. yes, those will automatically be placed into it, but like if one of those, because we actually have one that might end up happening. If there's one that's in it and then they choose to hook up to city sewer and water because they want to develop or whatever the reason is, then they will go back into the urban taxi district.
Does that affect their neighbors then?
Good, if they now have city services next to their neighbors. So if they, so say like it was a leapfrog, which is actually maybe what happens. If this property is not hooked to city services, this property is not, this property is not, but this property wants to develop, and now we just ran city services to this property, and these properties now have the ability to hook into city services, they would be taken out.
They'd be taken out of it.
Yeah, but after.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if the ordinance, if our connection ordinance has a timeline, but I mean,
Well, and. I don't know.
Well, then there might be a difference between a trunk line and actual being able to hook up to a.
What you're referring to is I don't believe it's on a timeline. It's when your septic fails, then you have to hook up. But if it just comes by and you still have a viable well and viable septic, you're not forced to.
We deal with that. Went in the school, the elementary school, what 7 properties. Some, couple of them had random sewers or whatever,
Yeah,
so they were
I
given.
worked in other jurisdictions where there was a timeline.
yeah,
That's what I
but
said.
I think if I remember from reading our ordinance, it's not until
Else.
it fails.
It's like your grandfather thing, your grandfather.
As long as there's some sort of required testing.
Yeah, you can have them tested.
No, but, you know, so they're saying, well, it didn't fail, but
Oh,
maybe
you're
it
saying
is.
it. Yeah, some building permits trigger it, but we
But
actually.
you gotta roll, if you buy a full property, you gotta get a compliance check on your sewer. That's standard.
Yeah, and Sherman County you do, I don't think I'm the next.
Okay, so you have a question on parcels?
So that's the ordinance, it didn't, so there's just some, details that changed in there to make it a little bit more effective. The parcel list, I just have a couple of questions on how you want me to handle them, so. The one, James and Amanda Berglund, is the golf course. So technically, under the zoning district that it is under, it would not be excluded based on the definitions in this ordinance, but it is technically a business. But they don't have city services. This is like the back part of the golf course.
Past ammunition.
Yeah, so I wanted to get input from the council on that, if you feel that because it's a business, it should be part of the rural taxing district, or if because it's not hooked to city services, does not have city services out in the back acreage. It is rural out there, and I guess if it ever converted.
Is this
to a golf
closer
course-
to the river?
Yeah, it's like, oh, wait, yeah,
It's straight east of the station.
yeah,
Somehow, the city.
yes.
Somehow, from that.
Yes, that parcel is not, this is the back
Can we?
area.
It's weird that it's
We
in
can,
different parcels, like it's not one.
This is just one parcel. This is not the clubhouse parcel.
It's not unusual though. People buy parcels and then they never combine them. Or they can't combine them because
If they're in two different.
this could be in two different, sections, or it could be such that
Lots of reasons.
if they only mortgage part of their legal, then they're, you know, the mortgage company typically frowns on trying to combine parcels when there's, you know, they've only mortgaged part of it, so.
So are there separate parcels that? Is there a size limit on the rural? Are we
With our
taking that
proposed
out?
ordinance, we would be taking that out. And the reason, there's several reasons why we're taking that out. One, there was no rhyme or reason. I don't know where they came up with the 2.5 acres to begin with. And if we did incorporate portion of Baldwin, along with some of our city properties, they have several, we have several properties and they have several properties that would be under that 2.5 acres that wouldn't have city services available to them. I didn't really quite understand when I read all of the paperwork, I don't know where they came with, it was just a random number. I guess I would have
I
probably.
think they were looking at your typical smallest lot that would be a Baldwin Township, I think is probably where that came
That's
from.
not, yeah, that's the Baldwin Township can go down, it can go actually down to.
How do people know that it's even there if you're not told?
Well, and that's. Sorry, we're having a sidebar conversation, but, and that was my perspective when I looked at I mean, if you're establishing a rural taxing district, you should set the criteria and put everybody in that meets the criteria. People shouldn't have to ask to be put in a rural taxing district, which is how
Yeah.
the ordinance was previous.
So it's like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Yes, so you do not have to, so that's the other thing, we are not requiring you to apply to this, so the former ordinance with the map required, people to apply,
To be proactive.
placed in it, this will just be.
And what I was saying is how were people supposed to know it even existed when nobody was told?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Even though it was previously asked for.
Yeah.
It's just for people that know.
Yeah. So,
Especially when one works for it.
Oh, it's not gonna be retroactive, is it, or what not?
No, it'll start in 2025.
So your question about the golf
Really
course,
nice.
are
It's only
are
been
you trying to
32
split,
years.
somehow split the golf
It
course?
already is. This, its own separate parcel ID. It's 97 acres. It's rural in nature. It is not near city services and it is not the clubhouse. But it is technically a business.
Well, but I think
Yeah. I mean, I have my opinions on which way I think it should go, but I wanted to run it by you guys first.
If I wouldn't have any problem with, separating them like it is, just. Yeah,
But is it gonna say in the ordinance, business is not allowed or included, or what are we saying here?
How it's worded in here, it's developed for rural residential or agricultural purposes only. So we would have to determine that the back 90 of the golf course would be an agricultural use, since there's no, that's not residential, obviously.
But it's not really agricultural either.
Growing grass.
It's not zoned business, so.
You could use it for a pasture or something.
It could be turned into a, I don't know.
It could be turned into a farm, but they can't turn it into anything else. I think they did a thing and where they could build on that golf course, it's like 2 acres.
Yeah, it actually might be wild and scenic even most of it back
Yeah,
there.
I think it was like they figured it was like 7 houses they could put on like total on that course.
And not along the edge.
Yeah.
Somebody.
I think that it would fit if you did not want it in, or if you did want it included, I think it would fit under the rural character and not developed.
I mean, and it's, the biggest value is gonna be the clubhouse area.
Right, and that would,
And that's not included, so I don't know. It seems fair enough, I guess. Is that the biggest question?
that is that question. I have 2 more questions.
Okay,
The next one I think is kind of, I just want to just tell you about it, cause, it's probably gonna come up. So, the second grouping, kind of, it's, so the PID that starts with 24-029-1300 owned by Ike. That is a vacant 40. That was actually supposed to be in the rural taxing district. We have a resolution that was passed to put it in the rural taxing district. It's zoned agricultural, it's all farm field, and it is not in the rural taxing district. I don't know why it wasn't, I don't know if they know it's not, but I feel that it did pop up again to be in it, so, obviously, I feel that we should place it in it. But you might, when this opens up a can of worms, that can of worm might open. And be like, well, why aren't we in it? We were approved to be in it. We have resolutions, so I'm not sure if we were gonna be retroactive on anyone, that would be the one that I would say. But if it doesn't come up, it doesn't come up. I just wanted to make you guys.
let's fix it and leave it at that and see what we gotta do.
Yeah. And I won't, when this goes to council and in the packets, I won't have these notes on there, so nobody else will know about that, but I just, I want you guys to know, if that comes up.
Well, if the character changes, then we obviously will change it, it will go into like urban.
Right.
Right, but I think the question is, do we do more than just change it now? Do we rectify past time where they were supposed to be in
I'm
a?
not gonna see nothing there.
We don't wanna do that, but.
And I can't figure out why, if it was ever put in or taken out or what, and I did actually send an email also to the auditor's office, just to double, triple check. Is there some reason why it didn't get put in there, but I haven't heard back, so. I'll have that answer.
I guess their name's somebody
I'm
else.
guessing there's not gonna be.
We can play the county though.
So that one, okay. So then the next one, so this is gonna be an issue that we're gonna run into when we annex properties. So when we annex properties into the city, it has to come into the city at the lowest zoning district, no matter what's on the property. So the lowest zoning district is A1 agricultural. So say hypothetically, we get all, that portion of Baldwin Township, it'll all come in as A1 agricultural. And then they would have the option to, like, if they're some sort of business, they would have the option to come in and, rezone the property to whatever their business is. We would have to do a land use map amendment and things like that. The problem with that is how we apply the rural taxing district to these. So for instance, this one that I highlighted, which is probably not highlighted on yours, it's highlighted in mine. So the third grouping, the one starting at 24-515-0030, owned by Vidaris Real Estate.
Just the 9722 18th Street,
Yeah.
that's what it is, okay.
It's all in separate pages for us, so
Oh.
it's really, we can't follow across.
Oh.
It's all broken into 4 different pages. Yeah, it's really difficult.
So who is the owner on this one?
Vidaris Real Estate, it's 4.4 acres.
Okay,
You
well,
want me to pass my sheet to you?
no, that's whatever, that's fine, it's. Give us the problem.
Okay. So the problem is there is a manufacturing business on that property that got annexed into the city. It is not technically zoned commercial, industrial, or urban residential, but it is not rural in character and it is not zoned, or it has a commercial business on it. So I feel like we could omit it because it's not developed for rural residential or agricultural purposes. However, it's not zoned that way. Because of how because it's recently annexed.
Well, I think the zoning does need to get fixed, but given the language of the ordinance where it says it's not developed for, and we know it's developed for a commercial business, then it has to be excluded. Cause because the ordinance doesn't specifically talk about zoning per se, correct?
Nope, it just says it's rural in character and not developed for commercial, industrial, urban, residential purposes. However, the one thing is it does not have access to municipal sewer and water. It's not undeveloped. And it's not used for rural residential agricultural purposes. So I think we can easily argue that one to not be in there. I just wanted to let you know that these are gonna pop up and they are gonna be zoned agricultural. They're not gonna have city services and they might not be residential or agricultural in nature.
What is the business?
It's a manufacturing business. They manufacture, I think, trailers or mobile homes or something like that.
So the one
It's
first,
west of the dentist.
yeah, it's one of the pieces we pulled in last year. It's across from,
Oh, it's where they sell all those manufactured homes on the corner.
no,
No,
it's.
farther down.
You're,
Over by Lean's sort of.
this Catholic cemetery on the,
Woody's?
Yeah, the old.
yeah, the old Woody's place.
With a tire shop.
And
Farther
it's not
west.
residential, there isn't any residential on, okay.
Yeah.
No residence, okay, that's strictly commercial.
So I think, is there a way to say, if you meet 3 out of 4 criteria, you're not gonna be in the rural district, you know what I mean? You've listed 3 things
Yeah.
that exclude you.
Yeah.
But if it's like, you know, the majority of those you're excluded, is there a way to do that? Or does that get too hard?
That gets too hard. And I think the language, the ordinance mirrors the language of the statute.
It does.
So,
And this, the reason I added the language I did and left the language I did, was actually mainly because of that strip in Baldwin Township. Because that's all gonna come in as A1. So say hypothetically, we get that strip of where the finish line is and Subway and all that commercial. That's gonna come in as A1, but the rural taxing district, I didn't want to apply to that.
So so it comes in as A1, how long does it? What's the trigger to change the zoning? Is it their
well,
They would have.
choice or is it us?
Technically,
or we
or
could,
expand.
or we could decide as a city that we would take on their behalf. I mean, we could make a policy statement that when we have annexations that we put them where they're supposed to be after they come in initially as.
Yeah, there's a couple ways we could do it. It would probably take some ordinance amendments or some policy changes.
Yeah,
As of right now, it just says it has to come in as A1, which actually to me doesn't really make sense. And what's the point of having a comp plan, but, whatever.
yeah.
So that would be something that we could change with an ordinance amendment, at some point, just, we're not to that point right now.
Well, in our comprehensive plan map has got different uses already there, right?
Right, that's my point. Like, so our ordinance says very clearly, any annexed property must come in. Well, and actually statute, from what I've learned, although Kelly couldn't find it, it does, or it implies that it needs to come in at the lowest zoning district.
But our ordinance could be more restrictive than that.
Well, it'd be
Okay.
technically less restrictive.
Yeah. But I would suggest that going forward, I mean, not that, well, I shouldn't say that we won't ever have any annexations. Part of it depends on what happens with Princeton Township, but I think it would behoove us to modify our ordinance that says once, I don't know, 60 days after annexation is complete, the city will implement, a land use and zone change to bring those properties into compliance with whatever the adopted land use and zoning map is, so. That way, they're not taking on that expense. Unless it's a landowner requested zone or annexation that we're working with immediately, like the folks that are doing the Pontius property, they know that they're gonna come in and do a zone change. But if, in the case of Baldwin, it makes sense to me that if we do acquire a boundary adjustment through the judge's order, that we have in place, a process by which we take on that cost and make things the right way.
And then, don't get me wrong, I actually like the fact that it's A1 for most purposes, because if we did something like the Baldwin Township, then we are we're automatically at the lowest zoning district for all those properties, so that it's not like they have to come into compliance with their sheds and their septics and all these different things, because our A1 agricultural zoning ordinance is rural. It's for rural properties. It just unfortunate that applies to everything that gets annexed.
Yeah, I mean, there's questions to be answered, isn't there? I mean, when you have something bigger than a 900 square foot separate garage, I mean, all of that stuff doesn't fit in city zoning, so,
Right, it would fit under our A1 district though,
right.
which is why I was thankful that that language was in there, because that's one of the things we were battling with the Baldwin Township. We weren't really sure how we were gonna handle that. And it actually is very specific in there and talks about that, that's there for annexation. But then we have these other ones like this, small manufacturer that, well, he really shouldn't have come in as A1, but because he's, manufacturing.
But I think Michelle's point about a time date to put in the right zoning area, especially if it fits with our comprehensive plan map to begin with, then we just take that. Cause there's a cost to
Would
that.
that be part of this? We're at.
No,
that-
It'll
that-
be separate. We
It'll
need
be
to
like
do
a
some,
separate-
we need to look at our ordinance and see what we need to change, so.
Yeah. This is
Yeah.
why, Mayor, when you asked me if I could give you a list of ordinance amendments that are coming up, I don't know until we have these discussions, and all of a sudden it like.
Everything goes on. Yeah, well, there's a couple other big
Chain
topic
reaction.
ones that we have to do, but,
Yeah,
do you feel like you have consensus for what you were asking?
I do.
Okay,
so, this will be on, we were double checking that we didn't have to call for a public hearing first. It can actually go on for a first reading at the next city council meeting, and I'll have this, or Sean will have this in the correct format, and I'll have this in the, I'll try to get it differently in there so you can read it better with the properties minus the notes, and I'll have it all corrected to what we just discussed.
maybe you can have a paper copy for us on that particular thing.
Okay, so you don't want this in the packet, is what you're saying?
Yeah, well, you put it
Yeah,
in the
we can't,
packet.
we can't.
We
read it.
just give us, Give
Because
us
if we
11
go
by
in the
20,
PDF, It was the
yeah,
actual
please.
Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, I can scan it in your packet differently, or,
however we can see all of them,
Yep.
you know,
Together.
Together, yeah.
together. Cause, yeah, look at this, well, PID numbers, it's like, oh, well, that means something, I guess, but,
yeah, I guess I didn't know that they could read it.
but that's all right. It's not a problem. Anything else? All right, take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made second, all in favor?
I.
Aye, opposed?